In California's recall election is on September 14th, only 8 days away. So right now in California, it's all mail-in ballot, but some people feel that it's safer to go into the polling station to cast their votes. But the early voting has already started 2 days ago, September 4th. So the election is happening, and the campaigning just gets heated up. And Governor Newsom, the current governor of California, actually is spending big time to save his governorship. And the money is pouring in to help him out, including the left-wing donor, George Soros, who donated $1 million. And corporate like the Netflix co-CEO Reed Hastings has given him $3 million. Think about that. And in the meanwhile, not only the corporate, but the Hollywood celebrities are also helping to lead the effort against the GOP, especially the leading candidate, Larry Elder, the conservative talk show host. So let's take a look, just a few examples among many of the efforts who try to buy the Hollywood celebrities. So actor Alec Baldwin tweeted, you can see that, what he called Elder. So actually he said, claimed Elder is Trump-level dangerous. Okay, and to that, actually, I would add to something is very interesting in the Chinese, among the Chinese American community. Some people actually is blaming Elder not to be a supporter of Trump. Okay, so it's very ironic, but we can have a discussion later after the interview. So then also like the Disney's Beauty and the Beast star Josh Gad also tweeted, claim a recall of Newsom would be a catastrophe. And even some Hollywood celebrities said that their lives literally do depend on voting no on the recall. Let's see the next one. So they are saying this is a life and a death. Yeah, and but for many voters, they also see it's a life and death, whether they can survive California's high cost of living and all those problems. So then on the other hand, the left-wing media in California, for example, the Los Angeles Times, the opinion section has published one after another columns blasting Elder, including one that was very famous, claiming that Larry Elder is the black face of the white supremacy, and you've been warned, as they titled. So clearly this recall election is really heated up, and so this morning I interviewed the Hoover Institute senior fellow Professor Victor Davis Hanson, and asked him about his view, his thoughts on the upcoming recall election. Let's take a look.
If the number of votes for the would-be replacement will be clearly Larry Elder, I think everybody will assume, he'll get 25 to 35% of the vote in a field of 45 candidates. So we know that will happen, but what we don't know is whether Gavin Newsom will get 51%. If he gets 51%, then it doesn't matter about the other election. And I thought 2 weeks ago, had you asked me, or 3 weeks ago, I thought it was 50-50, but what's happened since then, about $100 million has been poured in to his campaign from Silicon Valley, the Netflix people, the Google people, all of those who feel that Gavin Newsom is a very useful person for them. He pushes their agenda, which is basically for wealthy people and then subsidize poor people. They have no empathy for the middle class. They don't care about forest fires. They don't harvest trees to prevent them. They don't care about the 99 freeway or 101 or I-5. They have these crazy utopian ideas about high-speed rail that don't work. They want to shut down nuclear power plants or fossil fuel plants because they don't really care that kilowatt prices have gone up the highest there is. They don't care that we're paying $5 a gallon for gasoline. They don't either have so much money it doesn't bother them. They don't drive a great distance. They don't care about that our schools are rated in the bottom 10% nationwide because their kids have wonderful prep schools in the Bay Area, Silicon Valley. So these people hate Larry Elder and what he represents, and they want to continue this kind of suicidal, I don't understand it quite, this idea that you took paradise and you kind of turned it into a disaster. And you don't build reservoirs, you don't build aqueducts, you don't fix freeways, you don't build power plants, and you don't ensure that the middle class has a chance to buy a home. You restrict housing. You don't care about the homeless. You have 500,000 of them on the streets. And so we'll see. They have so much money, and they're now recalibrating the election as not a referendum on Gavin Newsom, but Larry Elder, who is an African American, they're calling him a white supremacist. They're going through his entire personal history, trying to blacken his name, so to speak. They are they're saying this is a referendum on Donald Trump. They're doing everything other than saying this is the record of Gavin Newsom, who inherited from Jerry Brown, and the state does not work. And we have one of the lowest rates of recovery from COVID. I mean, our unemployment, I think, is second highest in the nation. Gavin Newsom keeps talking about GDP. We have a high GDP, but that's just because we have all of these multi-trillion dollars in market capitalization of Facebook, Google, and Twitter, and what have you, Apple. But actual middle-class wealth and the ability to buy a home or to buy a car or to pay for gas, or purchasing power is disastrous. We have 1 in 5 Californians that lives below the poverty line. 1 in 3 people in the United States on public assistance live here. So I'm not confident this week that Gavin Newsom will be recalled, but I'm hoping that in the next 10 days, and I'm speaking on the 6th, so it's not even 10 days, I suppose it's 8 days, that there'll be people will say one thing and vote another. That can happen. If we had this conversation in 2016, we would have said that the polls assure us that Donald Trump can't be president. But there's a lot of Hispanic people, and I live in an area that's predominantly Mexican American, that they look at Gavin Newsom and they say, you know, he puts his kids in prep school, and then he shuts our public schools down, and we have to stay home and watch our kids. We can't work. Or we wear masks, we follow the rules, but he goes to the French Laundry and violates the quarantine, just like Nancy Pelosi does, and nobody cares. So there's an element of hypocrisy, and then people view him as a very privileged person who lectures us about privilege, but he's the most privileged person and was born sort of with all sorts of familial contacts that made his rise politically and economically and financially much easier than the rest of us. And yet he gives lectures to people. And then when he tries at the last moment to, you know, put on work clothes and go out and clean up the homeless or go up to a forest fire when he's never done that before, I'm hoping they see through that. We'll see.
And also, I asked Professor Hanson about a very special phenomenon. Actually, we were told by our listeners on our Chinese radio is that they were pouring a lot of ads on another Chinese radio who shared the same radio channel as us in Silicon Valley, but that radio network that media was actually just recently designated by the Department of State as a foreign Department of Justice as a foreign agency of the Chinese Communist Party government. So the ads obviously is against the recall and also just blasting Larry Elder. So I asked Professor Hanson, how does he think of it?
See, I think that the Chinese government likes this elite because they feel that its loyalties are either to a global community or to enriching themselves through concessions with China, but their second loyalty or their second concerns are middle-class American. And so That's what they'll always do. They always try to, whether it's Mayor Bloomberg, who has a multi-billion-dollar capitalization consortium with the Chinese government, or whether it's people like Bill Gates. All of these people have become fabulously wealthy in China, and it's an insidious problem when you have Dr. Fauci, who's a national icon, and lecturing people when we know that he engaged in gain-of-function research and channeled hundreds of thousands of dollars to particular Chinese researchers in the virology lab, and yet he keeps either denying it or saying it's not important or saying that he's not. And then when he organized an international research team to go over and find the facts, the person, Peter Daszak, that was in charge of it was himself compromised. And so, as I say, I work at Stanford University, and when you wake up one morning, I think last year, and one of their visiting neuroscientists is working for the Chinese military, it's pretty scary. Or that you have people all over Silicon Valley who first loyalty is to China. They're visiting students. The thing about that is you can have 380,000 Chinese nationals who are in school, and it doesn't take very many. You can have 1%, and that can be 3,000 people who are actively working for the Chinese government in very important positions of power. Every once in a while, as you know, we get a news account from someone high in the Chinese private sector or universities who's a megaphone for the Chinese government, bragging about how much influence they have on the United States. I don't know if they're doing that to seed dissension here or to boast that they can control things. And so it's quite scary.
And remember, Professor Hanson talked about actually one thing is the Hispanic Americans in California. Many of them are supporting Larry Elder, actually. And as a matter of fact, the former Democratic majority leader of California State Senate, Gloria Romero, actually publicly step out and endorsed Larry Elder as the replacement of current Governor Newsom. So Gloria appeared at one of Larry Elder's press conference a few days ago, and I got to ask her a question. I asked her why you decided to, so-called cross the party line and to endorse Mr. Elder. So let's take a look at how she responded.
Thank you, Cathy, for your question. For me, this really is about voting one's conscience, voting one's principles, trying to do what's best for California. And the ironic thing is that I often point out to my Democratic friends, quite frankly, this is not the first time that I have, quote unquote, crossed party lines. Way back in 2007, I defied the Democratic Party. I defied the Clinton political machine when I endorsed a relatively unknown senator from Illinois, Barack Obama. I'll tell you, back in 2007, I got, harangued by this for crossing the party. But I went with the candidate then who was not tied to, at that time, the National Education Association, advocated for school choice, talked about the importance of family and education. Fast forward to today, 2021, I'm doing the same thing. And believe you me, I really do believe, and when you look at who signed that, who are those signatures, 1.7 million on the petition, taking a look at some 54% of Latinos supporting the recall of the governor. This is widespread. This is essentially a response from the voters of the state of California that we need to do better. We can do better. Ya basta. We're tired, and we are ready to use our rights to bring about and enact not just change, but really, sending a very important message to the system that parties, whether it's Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Green, I don't care what you are, that you cannot take a constituency for granted and expect to hold us hostage when our kids have been failed by the very elites in power who are telling us to stand down, shut up, and fall in line. Those days are over. And Larry Elder, I believe, with the strong coalition, is that message to send to all political elites in California and the nation that people do not belong to parties. We choose our representatives based on what's important for ourselves, our children, our families, our state, and our nation.